Yes, it's John G. Sutton. Tales from the Jails. Today I want to talk about the National Front. As the National Front was a big right-wing movement, a pseudo-political movement. In the 1970s, 1980s, it was big news all over Britain. These people walking around, hiding behind the Union Jack, waving it around and shouting white power, stuff like this. It was a number of staff at Strangeways prison in Manchester were members of the National Front. Now, I was aware of this, but I kind of avoided it until I got a telephone call from the deputy leader of the Labour Party, a man called Eric Heffer, who was a Labour Party member of the cabinet, or the shadow cabinet for the Labour Party, and he was an MP for Liverpool. And he phoned me up and said, I had heard that you're actively promoting trade unionism in the prisons, which I was at the time. He said, and would you be able to help me investigate the incidents of the National Front within HM prisons? So I agreed to do a report for Eric Heffer that he could submit to his cabinet colleagues in the Labour Party. And I therefore approached the leader of the National Front at Strangeways, who was a principal officer. That's like an inspector, you know. And I said, oh, I might be interested in what you're doing, you know. Really? Because he knew I was quite a little bit active on the other side, you know, slightly left wing, you could say. But he obviously believed, you know, mistakenly believed that I would be interested in the National Front. So he told me a little bit about what they were doing and offered me one of these little badges that they got, which was like a furled flag and enamel badge that a number of staff were wearing in their lapels on their uniform jackets, seriously. And I saw one guy and he had this badge on, which indicated he was a member of the National Front, you know. And I saw some prisoner come up to him, a black guy, and said, what was this, you know? And he said, it's the NF. He said, NF? What do you mean, NF? He said, not fucking interested, yeah? So that's the kind of answer you got from the staff. I mean, the problem that you'd got was the staff. They weren't really thinking through exactly what the National Front stood for, which was horrible racist beliefs, you know, that some kind of racial purity and that the white race was supreme, which is crazy. I mean, we're human beings, you know. I never said anything. I was not there to make comments or persuade members of the National Front that they were completely barking mad. I was there to find out, asking them what they believed in. And subsequently, this principal officer invited me to attend a meeting of the Northwest National Front executive and to have a look at what they were putting up. And it was a big meeting, big kind of rally, where they hired this function room and invited me to attend. They obviously thought that I was going to join their executive committee. They soon were dissuaded from that. Yeah. So anyway, I get to this meeting, and the principal officer from Strangeways was on the front, sat on the stage at the front, and he introduced the guest speaker for the night, who was from America. He'd come from Mississippi or somewhere like that, and he was called David Dukes. That's Dukes, David Dukes. Don't take my word for it. Google David Dukes, yeah? He was the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, and in his regalia with this nonsense around him, he stood up on the platform and started to give a lecture to the members of the National Front. And there was some real Charlies there, I'm telling you. The bloke just a couple of seats in front of me, big fat bastard, when they started jumping up and down and shouting, white power, he jumped up, threw a few Nazi salutes, tried to sit down, missed the chair and fell on the floor. Hey, the sad bastard. Hey, there was a lot of that going on. And afterwards, at the end of it, the principal officer invited me to meet David Jukes, and said, we'd like you to join us, John, we're going to make some plans for a march through Manchester. And so I said, I'll come along and sit down and listen in and see how we feel, if I can add anything to it, So, seriously, I sat down with them. There were about 8 of them, they were planning a march through Manchester, past Strangeways and up down Deansgate in Manchester, and they said, but we've got to have some results. What do you think these people were planning? I'll tell you what they were planning. They were planning to attack their own march. Seriously. They said, well, we've got to have some action. We've got to be in the newspapers. We've got to let everybody see that the people who are against us are really violently against us. So they were arranging all these banners and placards and National Front slogans and white power and all this. And at the same time, they were going to get like local people to storm them and to throw bottles at them and all this. I said, well, certainly we'll get, so you'll get yourself in the newspapers there. I said, but if they find out that you're doing it, you're going to look really foolish. Now they'll nobody find out. So there's only us, only we know. Yeah, that's you, me, David Jukes, the principal officer, and Eric Effer. Seriously, I wrote a report on all this nonsense because there were quite a lot in Strangeways. Well, I'd say there was about a third of the staff were members of the National Front. They thought this was big time stuff, It was absolute madness, childish madness. The intellectual level of the argument was just abysmal. They were not capable of stringing thoughts together. What on earth? I'd say the state of some of them, as I said, some big fat drunken bastard fell on the floor. You're just trying to give a Nazi salute. What kind of a carry-on is that? And some of the staff in the prison who was telling inmates NF means not fucking interested, that's moronic, yeah? And the whole thing was stupid. It was never going to go anywhere, which I told Eric Effer in the notes that I sent him on this. I said, you don't need to worry about them. They're just so disorganised. They're so semi-literate, uneducated, that they can't possibly progress. It's nonsense. I said, and they've got this idiot from America over, and at the time, believe this or not, the police were looking for David Jukes because he was an illegal entrant to the UK. He was actually banned for his ultra right-wing beliefs and his Ku Klux Klan membership. They banned him. But David Jukes, whilst he was banned by the government, was actually staying in a property that was owned by the Home Office, because that's where the principal officer was living. He lived in a property owned by the Home Office, and one of his house guests was David Jukes. Yeah, how crazy is that? And what do you think happened to this man? I wrote about him. Then I contacted one of the newspapers, I think it was the Daily Star, that did a big feature on me, a big front page feature called Jailhouse Rebellion, about we can't do with the National Frontier, we can't, this is Victorian conditions, prison officers are being required to work in conditions that would have been condemned in the Victorian era, which they would have been. One man to a cell 12 foot by 8 foot, that's what the Victorians had. What we had in Strangeways in the 1970s was 3 men, no sanitation, in one cell, locked in 20 hours a day. Well, it gets worse, because 23 hours a day sometimes. Yeah. So it was diabolical. Anyway, I managed to get a photograph of this principal officer and got that in the papers. They call this man a racist, and he was a bloody racist too. What do you think happened to him? Come on, guess. Yeah, do you watching this? You listen to this channel. I'm telling you the truth. Yeah, what happened to him? The Home Office promoted him to governor and put him in charge of the race relations for the northwest of Great Britain. Seriously. And he ended his career as a governor, in charge of all the race relations. And they knew that he was a National Front member. And they knew that he'd entertained David Dukes. Anyway, that's today's little tales from the jails. John G. Sutton, I hope you're enjoying it. If you've got any requests for songs, you know, I mean, I'll give you a song now and again. Not very good singing, though, but my heart's in it. Seriously, do subscribe. Thank you very much.